Hello and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. I'm Matt Adams with a recap of the Colts' 23-17 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 17. Second to last game for the Colts. We knew that they were out of the playoffs going into this game because unfortunately on Saturday the Houston Texans beat the Chargers, and that sealed the Colts' fate. The Colts would have had to have won out to get in the playoffs, and it just kind of wasn't their year, right? It looked like it was their year for a long time, and then, by the time Daniel Jones broke his fibula and then tore his Achilles, and then DeForest Buckner being hurt, Sauce Gardner being hurt, Mooney Ward dealing with concussions, just a lot of things kind of went wrong for the Colts down the stretch here. And this game didn't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. But if you're a fan, it's the last home game of the year. You want the team to come out with a win. They were unable to do that, even though they did have a lead at significant points of this game and had a chance to go up at the end or in the fourth quarter, but unfortunately had an interception from Phillip Rivers, and that led to a field goal for Jacksonville. Colts were not able to do anything on their next possession. That led to a late field goal by Jacksonville, and then that gave them a 6-point lead. Colts had to go for a touchdown late, ended up with a Hail Mary. And as much of a Hail Mary as bringing in Phillip Rivers was for this franchise, when it came to an actual Hail Mary pass at the end of the game, Rivers just probably didn't have the strength to do it, arm strength to do it. So they brought in Riley Leonard for that last heave, and that ended up getting intercepted, and that was the end of the game for the Colts. So, unfortunately, let's look at the standings here in the AFC South. Read them and weep. Colts 8-8. They will have a chance next week to try to get a winning record, or they'll finish with a losing record after their 8-2 start this year. And, it just ended up not being their year, just a really disappointing end to stuff. Let's look at the AFC overall standings, and for a good portion of the season, about halfway through, most of the time the Colts were at the top of this list. Unfortunately, they've got the E there because they are eliminated from the playoffs. They will miss out. They'll be the last team out. Well, actually, the last team out will be whoever loses the AFC North game. So the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers will play. They'll be the Sunday night game, and that team will get into the playoffs. The winner gets into the playoffs, loser goes home and gets to spend the off season at home, not watching the watching the playoffs with the Indianapolis Colts. Unfortunately for Indianapolis, that's just kind of how things went in this season. But really, honestly, you plucked Phillip Rivers off the street, off his couch. He was coaching high school football. You kind of sent up the Hail Mary, the prayer here, say, hey, can you recapture some of your form, get us a win or two down the stretch here that might keep our playoff hopes alive? It was a big ask. Phillip Rivers played about as well in the first two games as you could have asked him to. The first game against Seattle, they worked this very limited game plan to absolute perfection until the defense couldn't get a stop at the end of the game there, and so they lost that one. Against Monday Night Football against the 49ers, a very good 49ers team, by the way, Indianapolis came out throwing, and Rivers was like vintage Phillip Rivers in that game. Almost 300 yards passing, but had a late pick six in that one that kind of sealed things, and then it got a little bit ugly from a score perspective because of that. And then this game, I think against Jacksonville, Rivers would tell you the same thing, just not his sharpest game of the three that he played with the Indianapolis Colts, and sort of this encore to his career. And really, thanks, Uncle Phil. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for giving it a shot. I think everybody in the league has a ton of respect for you, how you prepared, how you approached this. And, for a team that had everything in front of it, and then watched it all kind of collapse at the end. At the very least, having Phillip Rivers in there gave an interesting wrinkle to the end of the season. But you also do wonder about some things. So you've got Phillip Rivers in there. You had your rookie, in Riley Leonard, but they didn't play him. How are you going to develop him if he doesn't play? Those are some of the things that you're going to have to kind of ask yourself down the line for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, again, it was not a banner day for Rivers. 17 of 30, 147 yards. He had a touchdown, nice throw to Mo Alley Cox, had an interception, got sacked a couple of times. completion percentage under 60%, which, was the first for him in this return stint for the Colts. And just, he even said this was not, Jacksonville gives you a lot of multiple looks. And he wasn't fooled necessarily by any of it, but, it did sort of stymie some of the things that the Colts wanted to do. And one thing telling to me, Alec Pierce in this game did not have a catch, targeted 5 times in this game, was unable to reel one in. And again, the Colts less than 150 passing yards in this game. They couldn't get Jonathan Taylor going again either, which has just been kind of a thing, unfortunately, that has been a theme for the Indianapolis Colts through the last several weeks. I mean, even during the broadcast, they had a breakdown of, Taylor, kind of before the bye week, and then Taylor after the bye week, just a completely different story, different circumstances. You had a quarterback who was at first hobbled with a fibula injury, and then you had Riley Leonard finish the first Jacksonville game, and then they brought in Phillip Rivers to try to save things, and it just didn't really work out. But, hey, again, Rivers sounds to me like a guy who's probably played his last game in the NFL, but, I don't know. We'll just have to see. It would make more sense to me to play Riley Leonard in the last week of the season. He'll have to do it against a very good Houston Texans defense, of course, but that might be better for the Colts in the long run than trotting Phillip Rivers out. They will make that decision. I understand why they started Rivers this week, because going into the game, if the Chargers had won Saturday night, then the Colts still had a realistic shot of making they had a shot at making the playoffs, right? And so you can't prepare Rivers as he's the starter all week and then just say, oh, well, we're not in the playoffs Saturday night, so we're going to start Riley Leonard instead. So I understand that. Still a little bit frustrating from a development standpoint of the rookie, but, I think I understand where the Colts were coming from there, but the writing was a little bit on the wall. And we think probably that it's a meaningless game, but I don't think it was a meaningless game to Phillip Rivers, and a lot of credit to him. So let's hear from the Colts quarterback.
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously, over 18 seasons, been in this position before. Not a ton, but a couple times, where you got a chance down to the last 2 games. Some even going into the last game of the year. But certainly been a part of a few where you're eliminated beforehand. I think it's a test of the character of the guys and the respect they have for the organization and the game and the coaches and all. And so I do feel like that there's no disputing that today in terms of the effort and the energy of which the guys played with. That doesn't always mean you're going to win the game, but the approach was professional. And I think the guys, Shane did a good job last night, and then the guys, the message amongst all of us was like, hey, we get to play in an NFL football game. We signed up for all of them. They pay you for all of them, and you go out there and play. The thought of meaningless games, which I know that gets thrown around, and it is in the sense of it doesn't affect the postseason. There's no impact on the postseason, but to say a game is meaningless is not in my DNA, and I don't think it's in these guys. Obviously, what you saw today from an effort standpoint, because those games we played in the backyard when we were 10 years old weren't meaningless, right? And nobody gave a rip about those. But you went home crying or you went home happy, So there's no such thing. And that's the philosophy of everything matters. Everything we do matters. There's no meaningless conversation, So I think that's just a personal approach. But I think there was a lot of guys in the locker room that share that same sentiment. And I thought that effort was clear today. But it wasn't enough, right? The effort, I don't think the effort's ever been questioned of these guys. And but it doesn't mean you're going to win the game. And I probably in a lot of ways, Seattle, the way we handled the approach, which I thought was perfectly handled coming in off 3 days, 3 days of practice and 5 years out. But I thought this is probably the worst game I've had of the 3. Just couldn't get in really any sync or rhythm. And obviously a couple mistakes that cost us, certainly the interception. Again, it's been a blast to be out there and prepare each week with these guys and fight with them. And just hate we haven't been able to get it done.
Shane said that he would evaluate who starts next week at a later time. But if this was your last NFL start in the last chapter, perhaps, how would you explain this part of it?
Yeah, well, if it is, and again, I'm going to be on board and supportive of whatever the organization, Shane, and however that decision is going to come to be. I'm sure I'll have some conversation. It won't just be a blindside Tuesday, conversation from him. And I'm going to be on board to do what's best for the guys. If this was the last one, shoot, I told you guys I wasn't gonna have any regrets about coming back, and I don't. It's other than us not winning, right? Us not winning. It's been an absolute blast for 3 weeks. I wouldn't, if I go back and say, all right, now you know everything's gonna happen. What are you gonna do? I'd do it all again. It's been absolutely awesome. So yeah, I mean, if it's the last one, it's the last one. I thought the last one was walking off the field in Buffalo, walking up that tunnel, and I was fine with that. And that one had tears those few days after it, you know, and I was at peace with that being the last one. So certainly, if it is, I got 3 bonus games that I never saw coming, and couldn't be more thankful that I got the opportunity.
Philip, if this was it, this would be it. I mean,
Oh yeah. Yes.
George Foreman type of thing.
No. I'll be right back. I'll be right back on the sideline, which I'm sure many watching probably said that's probably where you belong. So.
Philip, what did it mean to have the kids in the building today?
Yeah, it was awesome. I don't know exactly how many, but 25 plus or so guys came up. A lot of them seniors that are graduating, some of them young players that I'll still have for the next couple of years. So that was special to have their support and them come all the way up here. You know, it's an 11-hour drive. You're only on one road, but it's a long way. So it was special to see them here before the game. It's been fun seeing some of those videos, and you appreciate those guys, you know, that you got to coach and watch and pull for from the sideline, and now they're pulling for you. It's kind of a unique situation, obviously, and I do look forward to getting back there with them. Certainly wish it was going to be later in the next month or even in February, but I look forward to getting back there with them, kind of getting back. I think it'll kind of hopefully kind of rejuvenate the whole deal. You know, you've been there 5 years. We've had some good runs. Hopefully it kind of kickstarts us in the off season, and we'll carry on how we've been down in Fairhope.
Phil, this is probably a better question for the other guys who've been here all year, but you never missed the playoffs, but there was a lot of good this season. I know you watched the team from afar. How would you even put this season into context?
Yeah. It's crazy. We were just talking, a few of us in there. I mean, obviously, I think the hot start is what probably makes the whole thing hurt even more. You know, if it had been one of those just kind of back and forth years the whole year, I mean, shoot, you look up and you find a way to win 9 games or whatever, and you go, shoot, it was just kind of a grinded kind of year. But the fact that they were at 8, you know, so soon, and it's been just a tough last 6-game stretch or so. But I think you got to be careful falling into the trap of, because I've done it since I've been here. Gosh, if we'd have done this and this, we'd have beat Seattle. And, oh, man, if we'd done this, we'd have won. If we'd done this, we'd have beat. But then you can go to the ones that we won. I say we, with all due respect, I wasn't here. The ones you won and go, well, you could have lost that one and that one and that one. You know what I mean? So you can't really play that game. It's the NFL. It's a tough league. 18 teams are going to be going home at the end. Only 14 of them are getting in. So the majority of the NFL doesn't get in. And that's just the cold reality. And I know there's been some franchises that have had some unbelievable runs. This one being one of them, through a stretch. But it's not a given. And so, but I know for those guys, that class of, is it 18, that Quentin's class and Zaire and those guys, that's a heck of a class. I know for those guys, you just know it doesn't last forever. I think that's the hard part too. It doesn't last forever, and you've had one or two appearances, and you just go, man, is the time going to run out? And that's just reality, right? That happened. We had a stretch in San Diego where we went 4 in a row, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we were like, oh, we're going to get one, and then all of a sudden you just go on a skid, and it's the reality of the business we're in.
You said you thought this was the worst game you played so far.
Well, I don't know if credit to that defense. I think they were probably as multiple as any of the 3 teams in terms of not letting you really get in any type of comfort level. Obviously, the interception that led to the field goal right there to put them ahead hurt, and I wasn't fooled by any means. It was just a bad throw, and the guy made a good play. But I just meant in the flow of it. Up until that interception, obviously we were playing good enough to be right there, tied or down 3. But I just didn't feel as in rhythm. Had some plays that were good. There's some individual, certain moments that felt good and were good, but just in all, it didn't feel quite as in sync as certainly last Monday.
When it comes to Riley, you've got your eyes on him in the off season, but being along with him now, how's your viewpoint of him changed?
Yeah, no, Riley's a pro. Riley's going to work at it hard, and. Obviously, I don't want to put a ceiling on anything that he can do, and certainly we'll always continue to pull for him. But I said before he ever got drafted, or even early on when he was at Notre Dame, when I got to be with him and some of his guys, I was like, he's going to be a double-digit guy in the NFL. And to what extent that is, who knows, right? Is he a starter? Or is he he's one of those guys that is talented enough throwing it. He's obviously he's obviously athletic enough to run around, and he's going to work at it, and because he's going to care enough about it that he's going to be around somewhere for a long time.
And that was Philip Rivers reacting to the 23-17 loss of the Indianapolis Colts to Jacksonville here in Week 17, last home game of the season, and for Indianapolis. And it's unfortunately another loss. The L's have just been piling up for this team at the end of the season, and kind of after that Pittsburgh game, this team was not the same. They did manage to beat Atlanta in the Berlin game, and then after that, just really tough. And some games it was the defense not playing well, like the Monday night game against San Francisco. Other times it was the offense not having it together very well. This was kind of the week against Jacksonville. The offense was just really inconsistent. Like I said, Alec Pierce didn't have a catch. Ashton Dulin, welcome back. Ashton Dulin had a couple really nice kickoff returns for the Colts, and that set them up a couple of times for, in good field position, and that helped a considerable amount. But the Colts just not able to consistently kind of get anything going there on the offensive side. And several games this year, we'll talk about this a lot in the offseason. Several games this year during this losing stretch that is inexcusable that the Colts went on. They were a play away. A stop away, a turnover away, a sack away, a first down away, a big run away, a penalty away from winning this game or that game or whatever. But when you don't win them, they're losses, and they hurt you in the standings, and they hurt your playoff chances, and the Colts just unable to get things done when they need to do. Now let's listen in on head coach Shane Steichen.
Overall, guys fought like crazy. I thought our guys battled like crazy. At the end of the day, it wasn't enough, but I thought defense, got some turnovers, some stops, special teams. Doolin had some big returns, set our offense up, good field position. At the end of the day, we didn't make enough plays. We got to be better there, but our guys fought like crazy.
Shane, when you all know your fate before you play the game,
Yeah.
how do you think that may affected anything?
Well, I think our guys are professionals. They understood, going into the game what the situation was. And you know what? We signed up for 17 of these things, and it's our job to go out and fight like crazy, to go give our best effort. And I thought our guys, played hard today and fought like crazy. You just fell short.
I don't know if you'll play Phil next week, but just given the 3 games that he played, how would you summarize just what you got from him under the circumstances?
I thought it was pretty good. Obviously 5 years out and coming out and battling, obviously very appreciative of that. I know our players are in that locker room, the coaches, him coming out one last time and fighting like crazy. It was impressive to see, and him being in the locker room with the guys, his fight, his character, his passion for the game, inspirational to a lot of people, not just our players, but, people around the world watching football. It was pretty cool.
Have you decided if you're going to play next week?
I'll figure that out Tuesday. Yeah.
Knowing yesterday that the playoffs wouldn't be possible, did you sense any different tone from the team coming into this one?
No, our guys were, like I said, they're professionals, and they were great pregame, locker room, everything. We all know we got a job to do to come out and battle and fight like crazy to find a way to win a game. And there's no lack of effort out there. Those guys were flying around. Obviously had some big-time stops, like I said. Special teams made some plays. Those guys were fighting.
You have 10-0 the lead is away. What do you see differently in the second half?
I think, credit to them. I think they did some good things. But I think overall we just got to keep some momentum going offensively, moving the football. Stalled out a few drives there. So obviously offensively got to do some, better things to keep that, the points going.
Shane, when you know your fate, again, going into this game, the success not being there the last couple of years, do you allow yourself to look at anything big picture-wise right now, or are you still?
No, I'll evaluate that at the end of the year. But again, like I said, we're so grateful to play this game and coach this game, and it don't matter. Circumstances are what they are, and you go show up and you fight like crazy. You coach like crazy, and go give it your best effort every time you're out on that football field.
Shane, a lot's happened over these last few games, but what do you put your finger on when it comes to 6 straight losses?
Yeah, I think obviously there's circumstances that are uncontrollable, some things, but there are controllable things that you can control, and you got to fight and find ways to win tight games, and that's what this league is at the end of the day, and we haven't done a good enough job of that, and that starts with me. So we got to find ways to win tight games.
It's 2-9 against Houston and Jacksonville in your tenure. How big do you think that's the issue not beating those AFC South?
Yeah, you got to win in the AFC South. You want to win a division championship, you got to win AFC opponents, AFC South opponents, and we haven't done a good enough job of that, and got to find a way to get that fixed.
Even in this 6-game last of most of these, and then just for various circumstances have fallen behind in the second halves. Have you noticed that? Has that stood out to you? Do you make anything of that, or is there anything to that?
I think it's just finding a way collectively as a unit of finishing football games. That's really what it comes down to. Play here, play there, call here, call there, whatever it may be, finding a way.
You mentioned Ashton. After the season that he's had, how can you describe what he was able to show out there today?
It was awesome to get Ashton back. Obviously, made some huge returns in the return game. He's one of those guys that's so dependable, and you can always rely on him to make plays. And it was awesome to have him back out there today.
Shane, one game left. I know obviously a lot of circumstances happened this year, but do you worry at all about your own job tenure?
Look, I'm worried. I take it one day at a time. I'm worried about the Houston Texans coming up this Sunday. That's all I'm worried about.
Given just one practice this week, was there ever any decision on Sauce and putting him back out there?
We talked with the trainers and the doctors and how he felt and stuff, and he's like, we're going to give it a go. So.
With one game left, you obviously try to win every game, but is there any part of next week that lends itself to evaluation for 2026?
I don't know. Like I said, we got one game left. We signed up for 17 of these suckers, and we're going to fight like crazy, and then we'll see how all that stuff goes. All right. Thanks, guys.
And that was head coach Shane Steichen after the Colts lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, last home game for Indianapolis in week 17 for the Colts, and that drops them to 8-8 on the season. Now, let's talk a little bit about that defensive effort, because honestly, the yardage was not pretty from the yardage standpoint there. Jacksonville 7 of 14 on third down, so they're able to do some stuff there. Had 370 yards of total offense, averaged about 5.4 yards per play in this game. But really, I do think even though the yardage was there for Jacksonville, it was pretty tough sledding for them overall. Indianapolis got a couple of turnovers in this game. They stopped them on a fourth down at a key point in the game. A fourth and long one. Jacksonville tried to sneak, and the Colts stopped them. Unfortunately, then that led to a turnover on the Colts' next drive, and so they were unable to capitalize on what was at that time a tied game at 17-17. And they got the fumble recovery from Ebukam on some sort of ill-conceived pitch play that Jacksonville was trying to run, but they weren't able to execute. The Colts were able to stop him in the red zone there. Jermaine Pratt, who has taken a lot of heat this season, especially in pass coverage since coming over to the Colts, and he's able to kind of run with a wheel route and get his head around right on time and stop Jacksonville from scoring right before halftime. And, that was a big deal for Indianapolis to be able to do that, to prevent that touchdown there for the Colts. So, it was a better, last week in the Monday night game, and of course I know that the San Francisco 49ers are kind of on an all-time heater on offense. They scored 40 points again in their Sunday night game. And but that defense couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't get anything. They couldn't get any turnovers. The pressures were really not there. And it was just a really rough defensive game for the Indianapolis Colts in that one. And so they were able to play at a higher level in this game, and then they got they made a couple of really big plays. Like I said, they got the 2 turnovers. Those were both red zone things, so they stopped the scores from Jacksonville in both those situations, and that was pretty huge for the Indianapolis Colts. And there were a couple of times where they needed a play on 3rd and long, and they were able to get them this time. And that is something that has really plagued the Colts this year. You do get a team into a 3rd and 7 or into a 3rd and 11 or something like that, and it seems like more often than not the other team is able to find a way to pick up the first down. And so the Colts were able, especially that interception right before halftime, Colts were able to get that, and then they took a knee afterwards and got to halftime with a lead, which is kind of unexpected. But even then, and it says here, if you're watching on Fox 59 Now or YouTube, it says almost good enough on the defense, and really that is sort of typical of the Indianapolis Colts. in the last, this last stretch of football. Almost good enough, but not quite good enough. And that's why, unfortunately, as the standings tell the story here, that's why they are 8-8, staring down the barrel of a season in which they may end up with a losing record after looking for a good portion of the season like they were one of the NFL's best teams. All of a sudden from best team in the NFL to, losing 6 in a row, losing your quarterback, having Phillip Rivers come back and try to salvage things. And again, I understand why the team went in that direction. It's not going to help for the development of any of their players, especially, Riley Leonard, probably not the quarterback of the future for the Colts, but, some development time would not be bad. We'll see what they end up doing on week 18. By the way, the NFL announcing and the Colts announcing that will be a 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday for the Colts. They will play on January 4th at Houston. That'll be the final game of the regular season, week 18. So Indianapolis will have a chance to, finish the season with a winning record. I don't think that's a lot of consolation given where they were. And, we had MVP talk for Jonathan Taylor. We had MVP talk for Daniel Jones for a little while. Some buzz for Shane Steichen for Coach of the Year, the way that the Colts offense was rolling earlier this season. But that all seems like a really, really long time ago, unfortunately. And it got so bad that they had to get a guy who hadn't played football professionally in 5 years to, get off the sidelines of his high school coaching gig and come and try to salvage the season and get the team in the playoffs. And I will say, it almost worked. Unfortunately for Phillip Rivers, as he said in his news conference, his post-game availability, the worst part of it is just unable to get a win. He came back, executed that great game plan just as well as you could against Seattle, and the Colts unable to win that game. They opened things up, kind of looked, like a better offense, a more exciting offense, I guess you should say, against San Francisco, not able to pull that game off. And then, this game against Jacksonville just didn't look. He never felt comfortable. Never looked comfortable to me in this game, and he kind of said the same thing in his post-game availability. But again, nothing really to be ashamed of. I think from Phillip Rivers' perspective, I don't think there's a lot to be ashamed of. Came in, showed he could still play. He's not got a big arm. He never had that real big cannon, as he joked about when he came back anyway. So even on the interception that really ended up being the closer in this game. He said he wasn't fooled, just couldn't quite get the mustard on that throw to the outside. And again, it doesn't really matter at this point. The Colts season was done. They were not going to be in the playoffs, and really just kind of playing for pride. And really, if we would have liked to have seen them come out with a win, would have liked to have seen Rivers come out with a win, because it would have been a really great story. It would have been an incredible story if the Colts could have managed a win or two when he was under center and gotten in the playoffs. But that was not to be. So a lot of questions for the Indianapolis Colts. The offseason isn't quite here yet. It's time to start thinking about those things and what are they going to do in free agency, how are they going to improve the team in draft. Is the front office going to be the same? Is the coaching staff going to be the same? Are there going to be some changes in Indianapolis? Those are questions that we won't have answers to for a little while, at least another week or so. I mean, if they do make some changes, that will probably come fairly quickly after next week's game. But I'll weigh in with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths when we preview the Texans game and kind of take a post-mortem of some of the things that we've seen for this Indianapolis Colts season. But again, your final score in Indianapolis, 23-17, your final score as the Colts lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They fall to 8-8, and they will go to Houston next week. So for the Colts Blue Zone podcast, I'm Matt Adams. Thanks for watching and for listening.